Scars left by cruelty may not always be visible, but they leave a lasting imprint on both the victim and the perpetrator. Over time, this harm grows, becoming a weight that the cruel person must eventually carry. What is often not understood by those who act cruelly is that they create a future for themselves that is bound to the very actions they took to hurt others. The world is not a neutral space where actions go unnoticed. Every single thing you do, every word you speak, reverberates. And the energy you put into the world, whether positive or negative, returns to you. The more you sow cruelty, the more the cruelty will multiply, inevitably finding its way back to you in unexpected ways. People might assume they can hide the damage they've done. They may think that time will erase the impact of their actions, that the harm they caused will eventually be forgotten. But it doesn't work that way. The truth is that the harm you inflict, no matter how small it seems in the moment, grows in ways you cannot predict. The universe has a way of ensuring that cruelty does not fade into the background. Instead, it works like a seed planted deep within the soil of existence, waiting for the right moment to sprout and remind the one who planted it of the damage they've caused. This is why the cruel person, over time, often finds themselves entangled in situations that reflect their own behavior. They may face a series of betrayals, rejections, or broken relationships, all consequences of their own actions. They may experience a sense of emptiness, a void that grows within them as the very qualities they once harmed in others, trust, love, respect, become increasingly difficult to find. The cruelty they once cast outward now begins to echo back into their lives, taking the form of loneliness, isolation, and inner turmoil. Moreover, cruelty erodes a person's own sense of self-worth. The more you harm others, the more you distance yourself from your own humanity. You begin to see the world through a lens of mistrust and cynicism. Your sense of self becomes twisted by the malice you've put out into the world, and it starts to manifest in your thoughts, your actions, and your relationships. You lose touch with the very qualities that could bring healing into your life. Empathy, compassion, and kindness, and those qualities which could have brought you peace and fulfillment, are replaced by fear and bitterness. In this way, cruelty is not a fleeting act, it is a cycle that perpetuates itself. The damage inflicted doesn't disappear. It may take time, but it inevitably finds its way back to the person who started it. The cruel person may never understand the extent of the harm they've caused or the depth of the consequences they will face, but life has a way of making sure that they are confronted with their own choices, allowing them to experience firsthand the very suffering they once imposed on others. In the end, the greatest consequence of cruelty is not the external damage it causes, but the internal transformation it forces upon the one who chooses to act with malice. Cruelty is not just an isolated action, it is an expression of a deeper inner state, a reflection of unresolved pain, fear, or insecurity. Those who lash out in cruelty are often attempting to protect themselves from vulnerability, attempting to control their environment or others because they feel threatened or diminished. But what they fail to realize is that every act of cruelty gradually locks them into a cycle of self-destruction, diminishing their ability to live authentically, to experience love, and to build meaningful connections. The true cost of cruelty is not always visible on the surface. It is the corrosion of the soul, a slow process that chips away at the person's true self. Every harmful word, every aggressive act, every moment of cruelty chips away at their integrity, at their ability to experience the world with openness and sincerity. At first, they may feel powerful, as if their cruelty is a shield that protects them from the vulnerability of life. They may think they are taking control, asserting dominance, or gaining an advantage. But with each act of harm, they move further away from the person they could have been, from the person capable of love, joy, and true fulfillment. The cruelty that one inflicts upon others becomes a reflection of how disconnected they are from their own humanity. It speaks to a deeper wound within them, a wound they may refuse to acknowledge or address. As they continue down the path of cruelty, they lose sight of the things that truly matter. Their relationships crumble, their trust in others erodes, and their emotional and psychological well-being deteriorates. The more they act out of cruelty, the more they become consumed by it. They lose their ability to see the world with compassion, and the world becomes a place of conflict and hostility in their eyes. Over time, the cruel person becomes a prisoner of their own bitterness. They might try to justify their actions, convincing themselves that they were justified in causing harm, that their cruelty was necessary for survival, or that it was the only way to protect themselves. But these justifications are merely defenses against the truth. Their cruelty has transformed them into something they never intended to become. They are no longer the person they were before they began to harm others. They are shadows of themselves, hardened by their own actions, distant from the warmth of human connection and the richness of life. The cruelty they inflict may seem to give them power in the short term, but in the long term it leaves them empty. It isolates them from love, joy, and growth, replacing those things with a constant sense of dissatisfaction, regret, and loneliness. This is the true horror of cruelty, not that it harms others, but that it destroys the very soul of the one who chooses it. And eventually, the full weight of this transformation becomes undeniable. The person who once believed their cruelty was a means of defense finds themselves surrounded by the consequences of their own actions, unseen wounds, broken connections, and a world that grows colder with every step they take. In their attempt to shield themselves from pain, they have only deepened it, creating an inner world where peace and self-acceptance are elusive, and where the person they could have been, the person capable of experiencing life in its fullest, most connected form, slowly slips away. And that is the ultimate price of cruelty, the destruction of the self, a loss that goes far deeper than any external harm ever could. In conclusion, cruelty may seem powerful in the moment, but its long-term consequences are inescapable. While it may cause temporary harm to others, it ultimately leads to self-destruction, isolation, and an erosion of the very qualities that make us human: empathy, compassion, and love. The true cost of cruelty is not just what it does to others, but what it does to the one who chooses to act with malice. It creates a cycle of pain, where the perpetrator becomes imprisoned by their own bitterness and disconnected from